Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Shovel Knight Showdown for the Nintendo Switch. This was released as a standalone fighting game expansion for the Shovel Knight Treasure Trove package, but was also released as a standalone product on the Switch eShop. Whether or not it's standalone on the Wii U and 3DS eShops, I don't know. But I saw it on the Switch eShop, and I said, okay, I'll give it a try. The original Shovel Knight was pretty hard, but I'm sure I can get used to a miniature fighting game, since this was supposed to be a side mode, and somehow it got to be a standalone game. So as you can probably guess by the footage, this is a 2D battler starring the characters, arenas, items, and music from the Shovel Knight games. What makes this unique, though, is that this was made by the same developers that made the original Shovel Knight game, something that you don't see very often in the fighting game industry. Usually another company takes beloved characters and puts them into a fighting arena, such as Super Smash Bros. So it's really nice to see the developers take their own franchise and say, let's try to smashify this up as much as possible. Although I would call this more akin to a stamina battle / gem grabber type of fighter as opposed to knocking the opponents off the stage. Although, whenever there's a stage with lava or an edge, that can certainly be a factor, but it's not the focus of the game. So each fighter is actually pretty unique. I wouldn't say that any of them feel like carbon clones or similar enough like the fighters in Smash Bros. Do. They share a couple of similarities. I'm going to use my custom controls here for simplicity's sake. I use the B button to jump. Not every character can double jump, but the few that did made me really thankful, because the few characters that jumped, well, their jumps were usually pretty pathetic. Then you use the A button to do their special move, and then they also each have a parry, and a couple of other little odds and ends. Like if you press down while in the air, Shovel Knight will do his iconic shovel down bash that completely plagiarized Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales. And then you've got Shield Knight, where she can throw her shield, and then that'll change her attacks depending on if the shield is in or not in her hands. So overall, the characters play a lot like they do in their games of origin, or at least I would presume so, because I really only played Shovel Knight, but from the footage I've seen of stuff like Spectre of Torment and King of Cards, it seems like the characters are relatively accurately portrayed here. The locations are pretty much pixel-perfect renditions of familiar scenery. I loved seeing the standard village from Shovel Knight transformed into a whole fighting arena. It's not the kind of thing that I would have thought possible in this kind of scenario, and in a couple of cases, such as when the camera was scrolling or when enemies would appear, I actually thought that I was playing another Shovel Knight game, especially when I looked at the footage isolated from the gameplay. Overall, this was the kind of game that I didn't really like at first. I didn't like how different it felt to Smash Brothers, and I also didn't like how some of the characters didn't allow you to cancel their inputs in case you made a mistake, such as when Shovel Knight gets into his down thrust animation, there's really no way to get out of it. But over time, I grew to get used to it. While I certainly have characters that I prefer one over the other, I particularly like Shield Knight and Spectre Knight the best, but those are just my personal opinions. And I don't really have an arena that I dislike. I feel like all of them are perfectly spaced out and offer different unique challenges depending on the player's fighting style. One thing that makes Shovel Knight Showdown particularly great, especially compared to certain other Super Smash Bros. Games on the 3DS and Wii U, is that it has a story mode. It's not particularly great. I mean, the story basically boils down to the Mirror of Fate has caused all the Shovel Knight characters to be in arena-type battles against each other, and they have to defeat this, one-eyed boss that looks like it came out of a Metroid game in order to get back to their normal lives. But there's enough dialogue and character variation from each selection so that you get a little bit of a teaser of what the characters are like in their games of origin, so that maybe you can say oh, well, this is an interesting dynamic that Shovel Knight and Shield Knight have between each other. Maybe if I actually play the game, I can see how their relationship plays out. Because each story ends with a little cliffhanger of if you want to see the rest of this, please purchase the full Shovel Knight expansion. Which I didn't, and now I'm tempted to either rent it or buy it, because that does sound like a really great offer, especially considering all of the expansions and Amiibo support that have come since I bought the game. Speaking of Amiibo, the usage here is also fairly limited. You can use any Shovel Knight series Amiibo to unlock unique costumes for the particular character that you scanned. In this case, at the moment, the Shovel Knight amiibo that are released are, well, Shovel Knight himself, Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and King Knight. It's a shame that not every character could get the unique costume treatment, and amiibos that are outside of the Shovel Knight series are not compatible. And even though the reward isn't particularly great, like the Shovel Knight costume just makes him look a little bit buffer, it is nice that those tiny pieces of plastic are useful for something, especially in an era where Nintendo seems to be all but abandoning Amiibo support in their games. Well, this wasn't made by Nintendo, so that probably helps. Overall, I think Shovel Knight Showdown is okay as a supplement to Shovel Knight, but I definitely wouldn't recommend doing as I did and purchasing this as a standalone product. It really is a celebration of the Shovel Knight games, and was designed as such, not the way I did it. However, while I don't think this will replace Super Smash Bros. Or anything if you do have the Shovel Knight game, I do think that this will keep you busy longer than you would think. While the story mode gets a little bit repetitive, there are plenty of items and characters and stages to keep you busy, and there's also some achievements so that you can unlock more characters and stages and items. So, having achievements in a fighting game is always cool, even if I do kind of wish that there's a little bit more variety in the battles. Like, a lot of times, most of them are just get enough gems and survive. However, that can really help in the story mode, as there are some missions where even if you don't get the required amount of gems, if you at least get more than your opponents, you will win the battle. Another thing I find cool is that occasionally the game will have 8-player battles. Now, whether that's actually possible as a multiplayer experience or not, I wouldn't know, because, as usual, I didn't have anyone to test this with. But I don't necessarily think I want to test it, because I'm pretty sure if I were to ask anyone, they'd be like, why don't we just play Smash Brothers instead? So if you can look past this being a blatant, yeah, let's try to copy Smash's success, I think you'll find moderate enjoyment here. I think it's a cool expansion, and I'm glad that Yacht Club Games did it, but I don't recommend buying this standalone like I did. I definitely recommend just buying Shovel Knight Treasure Trove and just be like, ooh, Shovel Knight Showdown is along with it. And this is also on the Switch, Wii U, and 3DS. So even if you have the last generation versions, you can still get this expansion if you already own the main game. So if you're like, oh, but Paul, I don't have a Switch, well, guess what? You can also get it on the Wii U and the 3DS and those other systems. I usually don't like mentioning them in a Nintendo video, but might as well make it broad spread, right? These indie companies really need more credit. So with that, because this didn't come out in 2020, I'm not going to give it a rating, but I will say do not buy it. Just let it be part of the update to the regular Shovel Knight Treasure Trove game, and leave it at that. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments or questions or things that I missed, I didn't get around to talking about the music, so hopefully this footage will tell you what you need to hear, and let's start a civil conversation in the comments section. So until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's hope a Shovel Knight character gets into Smash Brothers. The spirits are cool, and Shovel Knight as an assist trophy is cool, but wouldn't it be greater if this franchise could get even further pushed? Bye!